that's what matter's made of. It's not fire. No, fire is atoms when they get excited. Water is atoms when they're kind of all squiggly and joined up together. And air is atoms when they're dissipated and far apart. But it's all from atoms. And I think there's a whole tradition of historical materialism running through from the Greeks on into European thought. Gassendi in France and other thinkers, Lamettrie and Holbach and other thinkers said, look, these religious wars are ridiculous. Let's just have a basic agreement that we're made of stuff, we're made of atoms. Let's learn what they're made of. And so the science of chemistry and physics took off. And it was always in the service of medicine. That's the point of doing all that stuff. Joseph Priestley in Britain helped discover oxygen, doing experiments, and Lavoisier here in France. You know, these were exciting times to study matter. And then I think we have, with evolutionary theory, people like Darwin come along, and they begin to try and say, well, everything can be explained through material evolution. The structures of animals, the structures of humans, the chemistry of the cell, atomic theory. And they tried to abolish all metaphysics. They got, I think, too cocky, materialists. And you got the logical positivists coming along. And you got the dialectical materialists, students of Marx, who was a materialist, who did an essay, he did a PhD on materialist philosophy, comparing Lucretius and Epicurus. Epicurus and Democritus. I think that materialism is necessary, but it's part of the bigger picture. It's not the sole explanation. And this, I think, is the mistake that Marxists made, dialectical materialists, thought that you could explain everything purely materially, which I don't think you can. But it is part of the explanation. So that's why I'm a great believer in scientific philosophies. You know, I love the periodic table, I love chemistry, I love physics. But I want this table to be as respected in the halls of science as the chemical table of the elements, because this is the human story, our philosophical complexity, which the mere table of the elements doesn't show. And I respect my dear friend from Finland who came here to the Philosophy Club a few months ago, and she coined the phrase sacred materialism. She said, okay, dialectical materialism, no, we don't want that, it didn't work. Let's call what we want sacred materialism, which is understanding matter is really important. Bodies are amazing, so complex. You study physiology, as I've done, and worked in medicine. I mean, they're amazing. They're sacred, actually. So yes, sacred materialism is the base of ecology, of our knowledge of animal forms, of plants. These are incredibly intelligent. Even plants speak to each other, trees speak to each other. So everywhere we look, there's sacred materialism at work. And there's something supernatural at work, I would say. There's something, you know, there's a divine intelligence that orchestrates and coordinates it all somehow in ways that mere philosophers can't fully fathom. My colleague David Lorimer at the Scientific and Medical Network, they're bringing together very clever scientists to try and work out how things like telepathy and clairvoyance and all that happen. And what is the soul? Is it material, or is it some very fine etheric material that leaves the body? Where does it go? Where did my daughter go when she died? Those are the types of questions we're asking in the Scientific and Medical Network. And I think, you know, over the next couple of hundred years, if we survive, if we don't blow ourselves up, we might begin to get answers. And I think that's exciting. So I would say that sacred materialism is important. And, you know, it's an outgrowth of that pre-Socratic philosophical heritage, really. Okay, any questions, comments?
No, not really.
Why didn't you train as a... did you think of doing medicine or something, or just
No.
drawn to the sea
I
from
was
an
drawn
early
to the
age?
sea from I was a wee lad on my granddad's lap. He told me about his days on the high seas as a engineer in the whaler.
Oh, right.
Just getting to the work was several months' journey.
Gosh. He was a Norwegian whaling ship engineer.
Yeah.
So they were not sailboats, they were engined.
Steamships in those days.
And he was going up to where? The Arctic or
no, Antarctic actually.
the Antarctic. So you'd have to sail on the ships from Norway to get to the whaling grounds.
Yeah, train, I think, and ships around the coast of Norway, train down to Europe, ferry across the channel to London, and then train to Southampton, I think, and then steamship journey along the African west coast, all the way down to Cape Town, I think.
Right.
And that took
Months.
3 months, I think.
Right. Amazing. And that would be like in the 19th century?
Yeah,
Yeah.
or early 20th.
Right. So his tales of all that got you wanting to go to sea.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Yeah, I have a grandfather who was in the British Navy, in fact. He was part Irish, and he was, I mean, the family story is he sailed on the Trafalgar, on the Victory, which was in Nelson's flagship at the Battle of
That's
Trafalgar.
Victory, yeah.
But the truth is, it was after the battle it became a training ship for young cadets. So he sailed on the Victory as a training ship. But then he was in the Navy and he went to... We've looked up his records. You can look online. He was in Beirut in the 1890s. I mean, God knows what he was doing there in the British Navy. Yes, fascinating. Okay, let's move on. We've looked at our periodic table. I think we should maybe have a look at our Tarot of the Gods, because I want to plug into that divine intelligence. The reason for doing the Tarot of the Gods is, A, there isn't one, nobody's ever thought of it. B, I think gods they're like archetypes, to use the Jungian concept, of different ways people have seen the divine intelligence over the millennia. Different tribes, different cultures, all the nations of the earth have had gods and goddesses. And what they have seen is interesting to us now. We can like download their insights and see how they reflect on our needs and issues now. You know, that's the point of doing this. So let's see what we can get here. We'll do one each. Yes. Right, here, I'll offer you one. Okay.
Bell.
And if you want to hold one out for me, that'd be jolly good. Yeah. Ha. Okay. Well, I've got Hercules, and you've got Bel.
Bell, yeah.
Yeah. And both of them are quite important deities, really, and quite related, in fact. What he's the Ten of Fire, is Bel, and he's a Celtic deity, one of the most important. And his name actually is related to Beltane, which was a famous festival around May the 1st in the Irish, Welsh and Celtic worlds.
Labour Day.
It's Labour Day now. Yeah, it's a holiday, May the 1st. And it's the day of Bel. He was a sun deity, And hence you've got this wonderful card made by my Syrian artist friend Sarah the Daff. And you'll see there's a couple dancing and jumping over a fire. At Beltane, people in the Celtic world used to get married. It was May the 1st. It's the time where you pledge your troth to each other. And, you know, so he's a god who loves love, the sun, fertility, and life. And he was important throughout Gaul, as well as in the British Isles. There are 51 known inscriptions found to Bel, or Belenos, as he's called. He rides his sun wheel across the sky, and they found them all over Gaul. There was a shrine to him near Bordeaux, and you know, if you turned up here at the time, just before Caesar got here, there would be priests of Bel in every town and village in Gaul, and temples where you would, but most of them were out of doors. They'd be in the local groves, or they'd be wooden temples. So he was also a god of healing. So we know the sun's rays are incredibly healing in the right dosage, and people spending time in nature really, you know, cures most ills. So yes, a healing deity of sunlight. Why do we need him now? What is he coming into our card for? Well, I think we need healing as a planet, and we need the sun, like, to agree that the sun is sacred, but we don't want nuclear solar power on Earth. We don't want nuclear weapons being released. That would be absurd. So we shouldn't keep tempting the gods with our arrogance and our intellectual lack of humility, lack of piety. The Romans said most important quality is not just intelligence, yes, that's great, but piety, which is knowing what to do with the intelligence. Great Roman thinkers like Cicero said that, you know, Caesar was very, very intelligent, great war leader, very clever guy, wrote books, but he kind of lacked piety because he was destroying the Druid groves all over Gaul. He was massacring people. He was doing a Netanyahu. It didn't end well for him. Eventually people, you know, killed him off, and that's what happens to tyrants. It's a sad story because Caesar could have been a good man had he lost his warrior gene and listened to some of the Druids, in fact, that he was too busy killing. So yes, a bit more Bel wisdom would be good at this time. In Britain there was a famous king, Cuno Belinos, meaning the Hound of Bel, and he figures in a Shakespeare play, Cymbeline, it's the same word. And they found there was also a female consort, Bellissima, who was his consort. Every Celtic god had a loved consort. Sometimes she was also called Danu in Ireland. So, yeah, Bel is a significant deity, long forgotten, but it would be good to bring back. We should have a few Bel temples, I think, in Gaul and Britain. Any questions?
No. Well, no.
Okay, fine. So then we have Hercules. Hercules, or Heracles, is also a pretty major deity. He's one of the major arcana, and he stands for strength in the Tarot of the Gods. And he's shown with a club over his shoulder. He was amazingly, you know, we use the word Herculean deity, he had these 12 tasks to accomplish, which some people associate with the astrological wheel. He had to do one for every constellation. So it's a symbol of the sun having to go through all the constellations. He was important in the Celtic world, Hercules, because he's the father of Keltos, who's the ancestor of the Celts. And it's thought that he was, particularly in the south of France, there's a trail left by Hercules. And the Pyrenees Mountains were formed in southwest France by some rocks he put together in grief for a girl he'd jilted, called Pyrénées. It's a great legend, a foundational legend in early French history. And, you know, these Celts loved Hercules. So Monaco, in the south of France, this little principality called Monaco, the full name is Hercules Monacos. It's a city dedicated to Hercules, in fact, and there was a huge temple to Hercules there in ancient Greek times. So not many people realise that's why Monaco is independent, because it's Hercules' city, and nobody dared conquer it. So he had these tasks. He had to capture the golden hind of Artemis, capture a boar, clean some stables, capture the Cretan bull. I think this symbolises our human ancestry. We had to master our physical skills in the youth, the childhood of humanity. I'm reading a text on early burial customs in prehistoric man, and these great tombs that were built, etc., all over the Western Europe, and going right back to 30,000 BC, they find graves in caves in France, Dordogne. They're respecting the dead, and they often built incredible structures with masonry later on to honour the dead, and all that's important. The mastery of our physicality. But when humans evolved, we began to master the mind more. That's what philosophy is about. When these pre-Socratics started thinking and asking deep questions, and they were doing it in India and China at the same time, I think that's when Hercules has to be tamed to some extent and use his strength for the labours of peace. Alice Bailey, esoteric author, wrote a book called The Labours of Hercules, an astrological interpretation explaining how we go through those 12 tasks, each one of us, in fact. It's a psychological teaching. We're all Hercules, all men. And we have to learn to honour the goddess, because the name Heracles means the fame of Hera, the goddess. And I think we're brought back as men. I mean, I was on this restorative justice call today, and one of the women peace workers said, in America, in the USA, 1 in 4 women have been abused at some point during their lives, normally by a partner or a family member, like sexually abused. 1 in 4 women in America. So some males are misusing their sexual energy, like hugely. That's all got to stop. If we're going to clean up the problems of the world, we have to learn to use our sexuality correctly as men, and to stop dishonouring our women, because no wonder America is full of, demonic energies if we can't even master that. I think what would be interesting, I'll give a little test here, set some homework, is if you were going to invite Hercules back on the planet now, and you were going to set him 12 tasks, what would the 12 tasks be? Well, one of them would be to clear up sexual abuse, so that like the Epstein type stuff. That's an example of completely unacceptable sexual abuse by men, with the help of a woman in that case. But so that's one, clear up gender abuse, violence, intimate, abuse. What would be the other 11?
Good question, that.
I'll leave that hanging. Let's see if anyone wants to put a footnote into this talk by next week. Clearing up nuclear weapons, getting them off the planet would be one thing I would want Hercules to do. I mean, he could do it, because that's the kind of guy he is, right?
And sort out all the dirty politicians that ruin the world.
Yeah, make them all tell the truth, or else you know. That's a third one. Sort out the climate so that we don't have such runaway climate change and vast temperature increases and floods like have happened in the Himalayas and Pakistan. And,
all over the world right now. It's a mess. It's a messy.
yeah. Let's stick to, we'll just do the 12 key ones, okay? So that's homework for next week, right? I'll go away and think. He had a temple, by the way, on one of the 7 hills of Rome, the Aventinus, which was named after the son of Hercules, who had an affair with a priestess of Rome called Rhea. And this is a story given by Virgil in the Aeneid. And this was a favourite hill for the plebeians of Rome, the working classes, because they have to use their strength. And so they had a temple to Hercules and Aventinus on the hill. So I think another thing he might want to do is sort out class conflict. This huge differential between plutocracy, vast trillions, and poverty. You know. One of the things George Orwell says in his writing, he wrote an essay, saying that no one should earn more than 10 times what the lowest workers earned. I mean, this is a chap who purposely went and lived with the tramps down and out in Paris and London, who wrote about the poor in Wigan, spent time working with the working class. He'd come from a privileged middle class background, but he had a conscience. And he came to the view that to sort out social problems, there shouldn't be such a huge wealth differential. You know, no one should earn more than, if £10,000 a year is the lowest wage, then you shouldn't earn more than 100,000, whatever. And now it's ridiculous what,
Absolutely.
you know, the Doge type people, Elon Musk, is in the trillions compared to what the average unemployed American worker is living meal to meal. You know.
Another history from the States, maybe do away with that system they got there for the temporary. They're all temps, like school teachers. They're temp workers. They don't employ them.
They don't have contracts. Yeah. Well, that's another job for Hercules, to sort out the economy.
Yeah.
He in fact, I think Hercules did have an affair with a muse or two. I think he's. I think in some traditions, yeah, he's connected with the Muses, and this is the centre of the Muses. So.
He's a horny bugger, was he?
He was a lover of women, a proper one, and he respected them, and you know, they loved him in return. So he's you know, he's also figures in the comedy writings of the Athenian playwrights. Euripides wrote a play. About in which Hercules turns up, and Aristophanes did. So, you know, he's a comic character as well, but in the best sense of the term. So I think he stands for strength, resourcefulness, stamina, using our heroic energies, but for the good, helping other people, like a kind of knight, a chivalrous knight, you know, Lancelot. Was my hero as a boy, and I'm proud to be here where he was born. Yeah.
Yeah, to even out the richest among the world's population,
That's a big job.
that's a big job.
Yeah, we need Hercules for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, those are some little tasks, and we can think of a total of 12. Right, well, I think that was interesting. Hercules and Bell. 2 wonderful cards. Shall we finish with a poem to seal the evening's discussion? Because poetry is the way of saying things that can't be put into normal prose. And since this is the International Day of Peace, I'm going to read this one, number 835 in my collected works. This is a beautiful cover illustration of a Taoist silk hanging showing the immortals, which I photographed in Hyderabad in India. This poem's called Is There a Country? Is there a country yet for peace which has its soul straight and its mind on fire for thought? What if, instead of landing warriors at Troy, Agamemnon had brought flowers and a wink in his eye? What if, instead of landing troops at Gallipoli, the Allies had brought bright scarves, woolen hats, story songs, wooed the women with tales of old, and sat amidst the fires into the night? Is there a country? Is there such a country for peace yet? Short and sweet. Thank you.